So, back when I was a senior in college, buying my suit for the very first time, there was these things called on-campus interviews. Have you guys done that? Like, you have that here in this building, where you get all dressed up in a suit and go shake some hands and tell people why they should hire you? Yeah? So I did that, and I ended up really enjoying it. I had about 21 on-campus interviews. I was just like applying to just the most random stuff, like, just being a sales dude, being an accountant, being a marketing guy, like whatever. I just really wanted to have as many interviews as possible, cast my net pretty wide. And what I learned through that whole experience is that, like, I really liked interviewing people. And the second thing I learned is that no one really had it figured out, because I would go in and everyone's, fresh suit from Macy's or whatever, and sweaty palms, and I'd be chatting them up in the interview waiting room, and you're like, oh man, what are you interviewing for? And they tell me, and like, is that really what you want to do? And they're like, no, but just gotta do an interview somewhere. So, those were the two things that I learned, is that no one really has it figured out at this stage in the game. And the second thing that I learned about myself is that I really like interviewing people. And my favorite part about the interview was that end of the interview question of, do you have any questions for us? And that portion is like what I live for in the interviews, because I'd be like, all right, yeah, I've got plenty of questions for you. Like, how'd you get here? What do you enjoy about this? Like, what's really cool about the company? Like, my interview portion would last longer than the interview itself about me. And so I was like, this is something that's really cool. And the last interview that I was doing, I kind of like spaced out a little bit, and I'm like, man, this sucks. This is the last interview I've got to do. I had like one job offer out of the 21, great success ratio. But yeah, I was like kind of disappointed that this was gonna be like my last, kind of interviewing experience before I went off into my job or whatever. So I went home that night. It was a January night or whatever, and got out a pen and paper and really like thought about what I wanted to do with my life after graduation and what I really wanted to accomplish, what I really liked doing. It's like one of those things where you sit in your room and you jot down the paper and everything. And so I wrote down in like the next 4 months before I graduate, I really want to work towards something that's significant, that is like kind of entrepreneurial, because that's definitely what I wanted to do, is entrepreneurship and starting my own business and doing my own thing. And then I thought about, this job offer that I had was in September, which is like 3 months after I graduated. So with those 3 extra months that I had, what was I going to do? And so, I thought about like traveling would be sweet. Go travel around the country and be to places that I've never been, and use that last 3 months to do some cool stuff. I thought about interviewing people, and like, who would I want to interview and where would I want to go? And I started jotting down all of the people that I'd like to interview and like want to be like and want to learn from. And so really I was like, I have a great window of opportunity after I graduate, before I start that job, of 3 months to really figure it out and get an answer to that question of what I want to do with my life. So with that piece of paper, I basically came up with the idea to travel around the country and in an RV. Interviews plus travel plus entrepreneurship equals this. But yeah, I went into my roommate's room and I told him, I was like, dude, we should travel around the country this summer, and we should go interview some people, about why they like what they do for a living. And he's like, you're a little crazy, dude. Like, that doesn't sound like we can pull that off. And I won't forget, like, he was listening. He had those records. Like, he actually had a record player and like records. I don't know how many college kids actually do that, but he had a Bob Marley record playing, and it was Babylon by Bus. And on the back of this record label, it had the actual route that Bob Marley took on this like tour or whatever. And it started basically almost like where we were at in Arizona, and cruised all the way up through California, through Oregon, and into Canada. And I was like, that's the route we're taking right there. Let's do it. And so that was our master plan. And so I bought a domain name called pursuethepassion.com. I started looking into like basically how I could line up these interviews and everything like that. And then the ultimate like big go was buying this RV. And I was scouting Craigslist for a while, trying to figure out how I can like pony up like $3,000 and turn it into an RV. And this is what you get right here. So I named it 90 Miracles, and we were, I recruited one other buddy, and we were like set to hit the road. And so, so lining up all these interviews was awesome. Like, I basically had a dream list of places to go: Microsoft, Nike, Playboy, EA Sports, San Francisco Giants, San Diego Padres, like some really cool stuff, And the very first interview that we did was with Lute Olson, head basketball coach at U of A. And so this is pretty big for a Wildcat. I don't know if it's like interviewing LT or something like that, but this was like, look at my buddy on your right-hand side. Like, he looks like a little kid in a candy store, like interviewing Lute Olson, So this was like the coolest thing ever. So this was our first interview. We interviewed one other guy in Tucson who was like a car dealer, but he was like pretty, well off or whatever. We interviewed the namesake of our business school, Carl Eller, who is like a outdoor advertising genius guy. Obviously his name's on our business school, so did something right. And so we hit up those 3 interviews, and then we hit up our little Babylon by bus tour route, started cruising along, and something happened on the very first day that we were cruising out, and we ended up breaking down. So this is like 3 hours into the trip, and yeah, so didn't plan for this, but we started driving, and I don't know if you guys have ever driven like a really bad car, but times that by like 28 feet, and you get RRD, and it sounded like marbles, like someone just threw a bag of marbles into the engine, and it just like started, doing bad stuff and spewing out green liquid or whatnot. We had to go like 35 miles an hour on the freeway for the rest of the time to San Diego, which is like a 7-hour drive. Turned into like a 12-hour drive. But long story short, we didn't really make it too far in the ZRT. We didn't make it on the whole thing. We had to bum my mom's 4Runner and make it the rest of the way. But we ended up doing about 75 interviews this summer, which is pretty cool. But then, reality kind of came and had to start working. So this is actually a picture of me on my very first day. Looking pretty pumped. Looking like, almost like a couple of you guys when you walked in. I'm like, man, career conference. No, just kidding. You guys all had smiles and looking good. But so back the story up a little bit. I decided to major in accounting when I was in business school. And the reason why I did that, I was having a conversation with my stepdad, and I was talking to him about what I should major in. And he was an accountant, and he's like, well, if you major in accounting, you're going to get a lot of money, and you'll have some job security. I'm like, those 2 things sound good. So major in accounting, not really putting a lot of thought into what I really wanted to do, what I was passionate about. And this is what happens when you don't put a whole lot of thought into something, and you kind of just let your environment take you in a direction. So I'm actually a firm believer that if you're not passionate about what you do for a living, you'll never be great at something. Like, you might be really good at your job, but you'll never be like the best at it, because you don't have like that extra ounce that's pushing you forward and making you do great things. And so not only was I not even good as an auditor, I just sucked. Like, I was not good at my job. And it wasn't fun to be really bad at something like that, right? Like, it's no fun to get up and go to work and just be like totally average. So so what I did was I was there for about 10 months, and the whole time I was getting like these emails from people that were coming across our website that was like, hey man, this is pretty sweet what you're doing. Let me know if you need a couch. You're welcome to swing by anytime or whatever. I'm like, all right, put them in a little Excel spreadsheet, for the back burner or whatever. I'm like, I'm gonna hit you up. 7 months from now, you're gonna get an email and be like, hey, remember that couch? Yeah. So one day I was actually, as a corporate auditor, basically the way it works is you audit people's financial statements and make sure they're in compliance or whatever. And they take you to different companies depending on like whatever month. So one month you might be at one company, another one you might be at another. And I was at this one company building that was like the worst. I mean, it smelled like burnt popcorn anytime you walked in there. Like 7 a.m., burnt popcorn, 12, like lunchtime, the worst burnt popcorn, and then like 3 p.m., you just wanted to get out of there. And so I was at this place or whatever, and I was like, man, this job really sucks. I'm looking around, smelling whatever. And so I'm on the 10th floor, and I have to walk down to the 3rd floor to go ask, someone a question. And no one ever wants an auditor like come in their office and be like, excuse me, I have a couple questions for you. But you know, that's what I was about to do. And instead of taking the elevator, I took the steps so I could like drag it out, you know, like, walk it down. And I get down to like the last, you know, step. I'm like, man, this job sucks. I totally hate my job. And I said it out loud. And the person I was going to go meet was walking up the steps. And she's like, and she gets up there like the same time as the door, and she's like, well, you know what? Maybe you should just quit. And I'm like, that's a good idea.